Liana realized what happened and quickly came up to my side, telling her that we needed to be on our way. Neither I nor Kira had time to reply, because I was being yanked out of the arcade. I asked her who that was, and she just told me that she was someone I vaguely knew from college. Someone who I didn't know very well. I didn't have any other choice but to trust her word, despite Kira recognizing me in public. When we got home, Liana rushed into the house to have a private conversation with Eliana. They shut themselves in their bedroom, and I wasn't able to hear anything. I didn't know what they were saying, but when they came out, they avoided me. My suspicions only arose when my phone went missing for an hour. I'm not that attached to it, I just found it strange. It wasn't until Eliana walked up to me and said, "Hey, this was under the couch. Must have dropped it," that I was able to get it back. She seemed so casual and relaxed about it. I almost thought she was telling the truth. Then again, my memory was still kind of fuzzy. I went through it, but I didn't see anything missing or wrong or out of place. Perhaps she was right, and their private conversation was separate. The next day, Eliana visited my room with her phone. She asked me if I remembered about the winter's dance happening at my college. That, along with most other things, slipped my mind. Just a quick explanation, the winter's dance was a formal dance held by my college annually. It happened during the beginning of the second week of winter break. It's sort of like high school prom, but more professional and stuff. Though there are some characteristics that are the same. For instance, we have the Winter Queen and Winter King contest. Sort of like Prom King and Queen. It was a chance for those who missed their senior prom to experience something like it. I told her I completely forgot about it and I wasn't planning on going. She told me not to be silly. It was a big thing. She told me I missed my prom, so I was going. No ifs, ands, or buts. She told me she and Liana would pick out my suit, and that I wouldn't have to worry about anything. I told her I wanted to be there to pick it too, but she just told me to rest. I've had an exciting couple of days, so I should rest my body when I can. So Liana and Eliana left for a little to a nearby store. I decided to take matters into my own hands and look up my college's winter dance. There wasn't a strict dress code, but there was a scheme. Winter-themed, appropriately. Blues, whites, and even black was acceptable. I hoped Eliana and Liana knew that. I didn't want to stand out that much, or look like I was trying to show everyone up. For some reason, they didn't take that long. They came home with a bag in hand. Liana ran past me and quickly into her room, slamming it shut behind her. I asked Eliana what was up with her, and she just laughed. "Hormones, dear. Pregnancy can do a lot to a body, you know." Oh, yeah. I had almost forgotten about that entire thing. If only. Eliana unzipped the bag and pulled out the suit. The details aren't that important. What mattered was that it fit perfectly into the scheme. Not to mention, it was a beautiful suit as a whole. I didn't ask how much it cost, but she seemed very happy with her decision. She shoved it to me and ushered me to try it on. I did. Eliana was the only one to see me in it. Liana was still shut up in her room. I didn't know what was going on with her. Eliana smiled at me and said, "Dear, you look absolutely wonderful in that. Just as handsome as the day I met you." I took that as a compliment. The winter's dance was only a weekend away at that point. I was also feeling a lot better, compared to the previous days. After I received my suit, I admittedly was excited to go. I just wondered if anything's changed between me and my friends, since I sort of lost a lot of important memories. I did voice my concerns to Eliana, but she just laughed. "I'm sure you miss your friends, but isn't it nice just being with me and Liana?" I didn't remember how long I'd been living with them, but since I remember waking up almost a week ago, it wasn't too bad. Perhaps living with them, and only them, wasn't that bad. Or as bad as I thought. So anyway, the day of the winter's dance had arrived. Eliana had dropped me off at my college early. For some reason, I was able to remember the layout of the building. I traveled the halls so much, it'd be surprising if I didn't. I did meet with a couple of friends who I didn't remember that well. They were understanding of my memory loss and past sickness. However, when I told them Eliana and Liana were my caretakers, not to mention in a romantic relationship with me, and pregnant, the conversation was derailed. Like, they no longer were talking to me. I felt disconnected. It was strange. One of the friends brought up the whole Winter's Queen and King contest. Normally, I wouldn't vote for something like that, but seeing as I was just recovering from an injury and fever, I figured, why not? There were pictures of all the students eligible to win. For some reason, my picture was on there too. Though I knew I wouldn't win. Not a chance. Though there were a lot of other pages that I didn't look at. Evening quickly came, and we were all shoved into the gymnasium, which was set up days before the event. It was a nice evening. Despite the little hiccup with my marital status with Eliana and Liana, no one really paid mind to me. A lot of people, I've noticed, were being very competitive. It had to do with the contest, of course. I didn't care one way or another. About halfway into the evening, the doors to the gym opened. And it was obvious they did because they were not the quietest of doors. Everyone turned to see who the newcomers were. My mouth almost dropped open when I saw Eliana and Liana walk into the gym, wearing dresses that were far beyond what the dress code instructed. Not to mention, they had masquerade-like masks over their eyes, to further hide their identities. I knew who they were, though, but luckily no one else did. There were so many students at the college, they probably didn't know one was an adult, and the other was a high schooler. They certainly didn't look the part. As soon as their eyes caught mine, they zipped over to me, wrapping their arms around mine, and pressing their bodies against mine. Some people would pass out of happiness in being in that position, but I wasn't a fan of having a lot of attention directed at me, and that's exactly what I was getting. The two of them bickered over who was going to dance with me for the majority of the time. I switched between them, but it didn't stop them from getting a little competitive. After a while, I tried to excuse myself by getting some refreshments, but Eliana insisted she do it for me. Her leaving would give me some real needed space, so I didn't stop her. It was only Liana left, and she was more than happy to take Eliana's place on my arm. It was weird seeing them there. I wasn't sure if outsiders were allowed in, but I know that I didn't invite them. Maybe that's why Liana quickly ran to her room, because she didn't want me seeing their dresses. It wasn't long before Eliana came back and handed us all a cup of punch. Not my favorite drink, but it was better than nothing. The lights came up, and the DJ came up to the microphone. He was thanking everyone for coming, and thanking everyone who put so much work into the entire thing. The speech itself wasn't interesting, but when he spoke of the Winter's Queen and King contest, everyone suddenly perked up. He explained that during the dance, the ballots were counted up. Eliana and Liana were oddly perky at my sides. They were practically beaming with confidence. The DJ took out a neatly sealed envelope. The crowd waited in anticipation. He read the name of the Winter Queen first. And the Winter Queen of this year's winter dance is Kira Woodward! Everyone began clapping, except Liana and Eliana. Their entire demeanor suddenly went down. I didn't pay much attention to them, though. It happened all the time. My eyes were trained solely on Kira, who looked beautiful that night. I never got the chance to talk to her or to apologize for suddenly leaving the conversation a couple days earlier. But since she was being showered with so much attention, I highly doubt I would. The DJ then pulled out another envelope, the one with the Winter King's winner. Again, it quieted, and it felt like some game show finale. The Winter King of this year's winter dance is Asher Brennan! Everyone clapped again for some reason. Me? Winter's King? I didn't think I heard him right. But I couldn't think about it too much, because I was whisked away up to the stage where Kira stood. I knew for a fact that Eliana and Liana were not happy with the turn of events. When I was pushed on stage, Kira just gave me a smile. You look good, she told me. I was too stunned to say anything back, and she knew. It didn't seem to bother her. A small but noticeable crown was placed upon my head, and I only just noticed she was wearing one as well. It looked beautiful on her. 2 spotlines then shone down on us and blinded me for a moment. The DJ came up to my side. Now, it's customary for the winner's queen and king to share a kiss, he said. You don't have to do it if you don't wish, but just letting y'all know, it's a thing. He looked at Kira, and she didn't seem opposed. In fact, she was the one who initiated it. I didn't remember if I'd kissed anyone, but I wasn't complaining either. Everyone started cheering and clapping for us, but it didn't last long because there was a sudden feedback on a microphone. Oh dear, we're so sorry, a voice said. I recognized it as Eliana's. It seems the DJ has made an error. Kira Woodward isn't the Winter's Queen. Liana and Eliana stepped up on stage. The real Winter's Queen is Liana Mitchell. No one clapped for her, because she acted like they did anyways. Kira and I just glanced at each other. Liana walked over to us and practically ripped the crown off Kira's head. That earned some gasps and whispers from the crowd. Both Eliana and Liana practically pushed Kira off the stage, just to attach themselves to me, smiling and waving at the audience. No one seemed happy at the sudden turn of events. I looked at Kira, afraid she would be upset, but she didn't. She looked calm. I watched her weave through the audience and across the gym floor to the DJ's booth. She somehow managed to find a spare mic and hook it up to the speakers. Eliana and Liana weren't aware of what she was up to. Instead, they were basking in the glory that no one gave them. That's when Kira cleared her throat. Miss Liana Mitchell, you are not the Winter's Queen. Eliana and Liana squeezed my arm so tightly, it was beginning to hurt. I know you love pranking people, but now was not the best time, Kira said. A lot of the audience, including me, was confused. Miss Eliana and Liana are not contestants in the Winter's Queen and King contest. They're models, hired by the school faculty to raise morale and make things more lively. Eliana and Liana glanced at each other, obviously taken aback by the sudden change in plans. They were supposed to be serving food and drink, but I suppose Miss Liana's mischievous side got the best of her tonight. A few chuckles rang out through the gym, and Liana looked like she was going to snap at any moment. Kira walked over to the stage. Miss Liana, Eliana, we all enjoy your little joke, but please, if you would do your job. She was basically asking them to get off stage and serve people. With the expectant looks of the people, they had no choice but to step down. As Liana walked past Kira, she plucked the crown off her head and placed it back on hers. I was terrified that a cat fight would break out between them, but it didn't. Liana just opted to glare at her, but it didn't affect Kira. In fact, Kira smiled. That took me back. I knew firsthand how vicious Eliana and Liana could get, especially when it came to me and my attention. But to Kira, it seemed like she didn't care about them or their feelings at all. I think that's part of the reason why they were so hostile towards her that night. They expect people to bow down to them, let them do as they please with no complaints. Eliana and Liana are beautiful people, so to some people, it's hard to say no. Unfortunately for them, and fortunately for me, Kira was able to thwart them and throw them off their high horse. The DJ went back to his booth and started playing music again. I stayed by Kira, who didn't object to it. Liana and Eliana were serving everyone food and drinks, and dancing with some as well. I could tell by the looks on their faces that they were not happy. At all. Kira was more than happy to ignore them, though, in favor of dancing with me. It was very nice. She had a calming presence, unlike Eliana and Liana, who were firecrackers and constantly wanted to do things with me. It's strange to say, but I felt at peace with Kira. Eliana and Liana claimed we were all in a relationship, but I felt nothing towards them, except platonic feelings. Like what friends feel. Maybe it was the memory loss, maybe not. They never really did go into detail how deep our relationship was. How we met, when we decided to take that step forward, anything. I didn't think much of that, though. At one point, Eliana offered me a drink. Kira took it from her before I could and thanked her before gently shooing her off. I'll never forget the expression on her face. If looks could kill, Kira would be long gone. Kira didn't seem much bothered by it, though. She walked over to a nearby can and threw out the drink with no hesitation. I was a little surprised, but I didn't complain. I also knew Eliana saw her do that. That was the last time Eliana attempted to bother us. In return, Kira wanted to make small talk with me, and about what happened the past week. Suddenly, seeing me run off with Liana. Seeing Liana run off with me made her think she did something wrong. It's not every day someone panic runs from you. I decided to tell her everything that I remembered, or have been told, and what has happened. She just listened quietly and let me ramble. After a moment, she hummed. Well, that situation does seem bizarre, she said quietly. I could see her eyes catch Eliana and Liana in the crowd, dancing with other people. They seem obsessed with you. I just nodded. I thought that feeling felt familiar. Perhaps I was just imagining it. But is your head okay? If you suffered memory loss, it must have been a bad hit. I explained to her that I don't actually remember falling, only that that's what Liana and Eliana told me after I woke up. Kira just nodded and didn't verbally reply to that. After a while, Kira separated from me to go talk to some of her closer friends in her online classes. I was left alone in the middle of the dance floor, rather awkwardly. That's when Liana came up to me, 2 drinks in her hands. "I thought you were getting tired," she said. "Here, this is for you." She practically shoved the cup in my chest, and I barely held on to it. My suit was nice, and I didn't want to ruin it with punch. So I slowly drank the drink. Liana stayed quiet, which was unusual for her. I asked her what was up, since she didn't normally act like that. Not with me, at least. She would also go off on tangents, talking about nothing in particular. She just looked at me and pouted. Something I've never seen her do. "You've been ignoring me in favor of Woodward," she said. "It's been hurting my and Eliana's feelings." I explained to her that Kira was a friend that I was getting to know again. Liana continued to argue that despite that, I should be with them instead of her. She tried to guilt me by saying that me being Winter's king doesn't mean that her and Eliana aren't my queens. I honestly, truly couldn't grasp what I was doing wrong, and I told her that. I also said that since I abruptly left our conversation in the arcade, I owed her a conversation and explanation. She just handed me her drink with a flippant, "Finish it," before walking off back into the crowd. I didn't feel bad, but I did finish her drink. I don't remember if there was alcohol served at the Winter's dance. We were all above the legal age, but I think alcohol was prohibited on school grounds, even at events. I started to feel strange after drinking Liana's drink, and went over to grab some water. Eliana was already there, though, as if she was waiting for me. "You seem to be having a good time," she said. I could tell in her tone she was being passive-aggressive. Both her and Liana could be very snappy when annoyed or neglected. I told her I was, and that I was happy to be able to share something with my classmates to talk about later. "I wish that were the same with you and Liana and I," Eliana said. I knew I was going to get into another altercation. I tried to explain to her that as much as I loved her and Liana, I still have friends I care for, too. She didn't seem too happy about that. "Well, it's not a problem. You enjoy yourself tonight, because there's still more to come. The night's not finished," is what she said before handing me a glass of water and walking off. I was kind of scared to think about the implications in her last sentence, but my head was beginning to grow fuzzy again, so I didn't think about it too much. I downed the water and joined the others in the middle of the floor again. It was getting near 10 at night. The dance was still going on, and would continue well to midnight, but I was hitting my limit, energy-wise and social-wise. I pulled Kira aside to let her know I was leaving, but she stopped me after a moment. "Are you driving?" she asked. I told her that Eliana was going to drive, since it was her that dropped me off in the first place, and probably her that drove here. Liana didn't have her license. I then asked her why. "You seem a little buzzed, you know?" she replied, which was strange, because no alcohol was served at the dance. Kira seemed to realize that too, and was concerned over it. I told her not to worry, and that I was cognizant enough to know where I am and what I was doing. She was still worried, but told me to be careful. I downed my last drink and went off to go find Eliana and Liana, who were conveniently in the same place. I told them that I was ready to head home, but a wave of nausea hit me. Eliana asked if I was alright, but I just told them I'd be right back. Something in her tone made me even more uneasy, though, but I was a little too preoccupied to think about it. I managed to find my way over to the bathroom stalls, which were connected to the gym. I'm not sure how I looked, but I think I kinda stumbled a little. I don't know what I drank or how much, but my head was growing fuzzier and fuzzier. Through it all, I remember a hand grabbing mine and leading me into a bathroom. I thought that someone saw me struggling and helped me get to the toilet, because I was sick to my stomach. But the next thing I know, I'm lying on the floor. I don't know whether I actually heaved or not, but I could vaguely tell that I was being stripped of my clothes. The bathroom was dark. I couldn't see who was doing it, but I was too tired and tipsy to fight back. I could feel new clothes being put on me, and the sound of a bag zipping up loudly. I assumed the bathroom was empty. Otherwise, I don't think they would have gotten away with undressing a half-conscious person on the floor of a public bathroom. The lights were suddenly turned on, and I was blinded immediately. I didn't hear any voices. Whoever was doing it silently and quickly. I don't think I was in there for more than 10 minutes, but time was a little warped to me then, so who really knows? I was hauled up by multiple arms, which led me to think there was more than one person. My vision was weird and blurred, with lines and stars dancing across it. I probably was fully drunk, or drugged even. I'm still not sure. We passed by the gymnasium, and no one paid any mind to me being dragged out by two people. I did notice Kira across the gym floor who spotted me. I couldn't see her that clearly, but I saw her turn and leave from one of the spare doors. I didn't know where she went, and my mind was too muddled to care. I was basically carried out of the school, and no one noticed, strangely. They all were at the dance, so there were no people out in the halls or the classes or parking lot. Security was non-existent. There were a lot of cars from what I could faintly remember, and the parking lot itself wasn't that brightly lit. It was dark, too. We were fumbling around for a while. I was placed in the back of a car, but I wasn't buckled in. It also didn't feel like leather seats or seats at all. I think I was placed in the trunk of a car, not the back seat. "Drink this," I heard a voice say. I could barely make it out as Eliana's, but I couldn't do anything about it. Eliana helped pour a drink down my throat before closing the trunk on me. When the car started, the lull of the engine and wheels on the road helped me black out completely.